I won't share my name not because I'm ashamed, but because some things are better left buried. I still have nightmares about what happened 5 years ago, when I was only 15. Back then we had an elderly servant in our house. He was about 60 years old, weathered by time and hard labor, but his hands were rough and gnarled from years of doing the same household chores, gardening, cleaning, the usual menial tasks. His presence was always silent and lingering, like a shadow that never quite left the corners of the house. At first, nothing seemed wrong. It was a hot summer day when it started. Everything felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. He came up to me in the yard, his face unreadable, and he said in a low voice, almost like a whisper, "You're very beautiful." It sounded innocent enough, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill crawling down my spine. I shrugged it off, telling myself it was just a harmless comment. But it wasn't. One afternoon, I invited a few friends over. The house was filled with laughter and chatter as we hung out in the living room. We were young, carefree, unaware of the darker currents flowing just beneath the surface. That's when he appeared, stepping into the room with that unsettling calmness of his. He stared at me with those gray, hollow eyes, and then, as if compelled by some invisible force, he spoke to my friends. "This girl, I find her very beautiful." My heart dropped. I felt sick. The room fell into an awkward silence, broken only by my friends' nervous laughter. But I could see it in their eyes, discomfort, confusion. I pretended to laugh it off, but deep inside my stomach twisted with dread. I told my mother about it later, but she didn't seem to think much of it. "He's been with us for years," she said. "He's harmless. I'll talk to him." She brushed it off, dismissing my unease as childish overreaction. After all, he'd been working with us for over 10 years. He was trusted. But was he? I started locking myself in my room more often, avoiding him whenever I could. The house seemed different, darker, like something was waiting in the corners, watching me. And then one afternoon, when the sun was setting and everything seemed too quiet, it happened. My mother was out, and my father, who was usually away on business, was home that day, thankfully asleep in their bedroom. I wandered into the kitchen, my thoughts on a snack, when suddenly I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, and there he was, just standing there. His eyes, dark and intent, were fixed on me. His lips curled into a small, unsettling smile. He said, "I would really love to talk to you privately. You're very beautiful." The words hung in the air like poison, and in that moment I froze. The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in around me. My breath caught in my throat, and before I even realized what I was doing, I ran, panicked, straight to my parents' bedroom, slamming the door behind me, locking it tight. I heard his footsteps retreat, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still there, just on the other side of the door, waiting. When my mother came back, I told her everything I'd been holding in. Her face went pale as she listened, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had always trusted him, but now she couldn't deny it. His behavior had crossed a line. She fired him immediately. But even that didn't feel like enough. Something inside me told me that man wasn't finished, that something far worse could have happened. Something I didn't want to think about. But I couldn't shake the thought of what he might have done if I hadn't run. Shortly after that, we moved. Not just because of him, but because we had to leave for a new city for my higher education. But even now, when the night is still and the shadows stretch too long across the room, I can't help but wonder, what if I hadn't locked that door in time? What if my parents weren't home that day? What else had he been planning? The thought still haunts me. This happened to me over 10 years ago, but it's a memory that still lingers, vivid and terrifying. I was only 10 years old at the time, and back then, I didn't understand what was happening or how I should react. I only knew that something wasn't right. At the time, we were living in a bustling metropolitan city. My family and I were invited to visit my uncle's house, a huge 2-story bungalow in a quiet part of town. He was a wealthy man working in a high position within the police department, and his house reflected that. It was beautiful, expansive, and filled with the kind of wealth that left a feeling of awe. I was excited not only because the house was incredible but also because I loved spending time with my cousins. I had 2 cousins staying there. One was 11 years older than me and the other 7 years younger. The younger one had autism, so we didn't interact with him much. His communication was limited, but we loved him all the same. Most of my time, though, was spent with the older cousin who was more my age, and we'd talk, play, and laugh for hours. One day we went out on a city tour, and the excitement of the day left me exhausted. That night, after the trip, I argued with my mom, insisting that I wanted to sleep in my older cousin's room. I loved hanging out with her and it was a treat to sleep over. My mom agreed and I was soon tucked into her bed. Her room had a balcony attached to it, something I remember clearly. Even though I was tired, sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned, restless and unable to settle. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to explore her room, and that's when I found myself standing in front of the balcony doors. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the only sound being the rustling of leaves in the garden below. My uncle often drank his tea there in the mornings and it was peaceful by day, but now it was dark, pitch black. Only the silhouette of the garden furniture could be seen against the darkness. My eyes scanned the garden below, trying to make sense of the shapes in the shadows. That's when I saw her. A woman stood near the edge of the garden, her body shrouded in black, with an eerie smile twisting her face. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up as she turned toward me, her smile widening into something unnatural, something that didn't belong in the world of the living. She locked eyes with me for a brief moment and then it happened, she lunged. It wasn't a physical movement, but her presence seemed to stretch as though she were trying to jump up and reach me. Frozen in terror, I stumbled back, slamming the balcony door shut. My heart was pounding in my chest as I ran to my cousin, diving under the blanket and trembling. I woke her up, but all she did was mumble, "Just sleep." So I closed my eyes, my heart still racing, and tried to force myself into sleep, though the fear kept me wide awake. The next morning, I rushed to the balcony to see if I could make sense of what happened. To my relief, my uncle was sitting there drinking his tea just like he always did. I immediately told everyone about what I saw, the woman, the smile, the jump. But they all dismissed it as a bad dream, a nightmare from a restless mind. "You must have imagined it," they said. But I knew it wasn't a dream. The terror I felt was real. The woman's face, the smile, those were not figments of my imagination. Every night after that, I refused to sleep alone in that room. I stayed with my mom, clutching the covers, hoping that whatever I'd seen would stay out of my mind. As the years passed, I grew older, but the memory never left me. The face of that woman is now blurry in my mind, but the dread still tightens my chest whenever I think about it. And it still doesn't feel like a dream. It felt like something real, something that could have reached up and grabbed me if I hadn't run. My father, concerned by my fear, decided to check the balcony one night, not long after my experience. He and my uncle stood outside around the same time I had seen her, but they found nothing. No woman, no strange figure, just the quiet of the night. To this day I wonder, was it a nightmare or was it something else? Was it a manifestation of my childhood fears, or was there something, or someone, out there? The thought still unsettles me. Trigger warning. This story is not about ghosts or monsters. It's about the dark, hidden dangers that lurk in the places we least expect. Not long ago, just a minor female, and my friend who was a bit older, male, along with his brothers and one of his other friends, decided to explore a tunnel beneath a bridge in our city. It wasn't anything extraordinary, just one of those grimy concrete drain tunnels built to redirect rainwater under the roads. You know the kind, the ones people forget exist until they're standing right over them, staring down into the darkness below. We lived in the ghetto, and as much as it sucked, there wasn't really anywhere to hang out. My friend, who didn't have his driver's license yet, would sometimes invite me and a few others out to that tunnel, mostly because it was a place where we could just escape, be left alone, talk, and just forget about everything else for a while. It was oddly comforting despite the weirdness of it. A forgotten part of the city, standing as a silent observer to our boredom. We went there often. But this time was different. One evening, it was me, my friend, his brothers, and another one of his buddies, all venturing deeper into the tunnel than we had before. The deeper we went, the darker it became, and the air grew thick with dampness. We reached a spot that connected to a manhole, where graffiti sprayed on the walls told stories of rebellion and hidden lives. There were the usual tags, names, nonsense symbols, and inappropriate anime stickers, the kind that should never be near something like this. At first, it felt like any other time. We were all laughing, joking around, checking out the bizarre artwork, the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a tunnel forgotten by time. But then something caught our attention, a smaller tunnel branching off to the left. It looked more like a crawl space, narrow, dark, and inviting in a strange way. My friend and his friend decided to check it out. My friend, ever the curious one, turned on his camera, eager to see what might be down there. "Just in case we find something interesting," he said, a grin spreading across his face. The rest of us stayed back, sitting around, still giggling about the ridiculous stickers and cracking jokes. But the atmosphere shifted just slightly. That nagging feeling, the one you get when something's not quite right, started to settle in. Then, after what felt like an eternity, they emerged from the crawl space. My friend's face was pale, his eyes wide with something I couldn't place. He glanced at the others, his mouth tight with concern. I could see the discomfort etched in his expression. Something had clearly shaken him. "All right, we should head out," he said, his voice low, almost tense. I could feel the pit in my stomach drop. My anxiety was kicking in full force. "Why?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but already feeling the fear creeping in. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes darted nervously, and when he finally spoke, his words hit me like a freight train. "We found an old, dirty mattress," he began, the words struggling to leave his mouth. "And on the walls, there were photos, nasty ones. What worried me was that some of them, they looked like they might be underaged." The air grew cold. The tunnel that had once felt like a place to hide away now felt like a trap, an unmarked grave that had been waiting for someone to wander in. My skin crawled. I could hardly breathe, the weight of what he said hanging in the air like a thick, suffocating fog. I didn't know what to think. It was so wrong, so vile. I couldn't even begin to process it. All I could do was follow him as we made our way out of that place. We didn't speak much after that. The silence was oppressive, each of us lost in our own thoughts, haunted by what we had just uncovered. Even now, I wonder, what kind of things had gone on in that tunnel? Who had left those pictures? And why had we been drawn there, to that exact spot, that exact moment? The question gnaws at me, turning my thoughts dark whenever I'm alone. I can still hear the echo of my friend's voice, the words he could barely bring himself to say. I keep thinking about it, about what might have happened if we had stayed longer, explored deeper. But I know one thing for sure now, some places are better left unexplored. It was a Sunday morning like any other. My family had just finished church and we were all starving, so we stopped at a nearby store to grab some food. I was 10, my sister was 13, and we were both glued to our tablets, completely absorbed in our little digital worlds as we sat there, waiting for our grandparents to order. The store was small, a quiet little place that didn't attract much attention. My sister was beside me, her back turned to the entrance as we played on our devices. I was facing her, just enjoying the music, lost in my own head, when something caught my attention. At first, I thought it was just a normal customer walking in. But then I saw him, a tall, thin old man with a weathered brown beanie, his clothes ragged and stained with grime. He wasn't walking casually like a regular person. He was sprinting towards us, moving with a purpose, like he knew exactly where to find us. Before I could even react, he was there, standing right behind my sister. My heart skipped a beat. I froze. The man didn't make a sound. He just stood there, looming behind my sister, who was completely oblivious, her eyes glued to her tablet. His smile was the most disturbing thing I'd ever seen. It stretched across his face, wide and toothy, but his teeth were yellowed and stained, like he'd been drinking coffee nonstop for years, or worse, like he hadn't brushed them in forever. His eyes didn't sparkle. They were empty, hollow, and fixed on my sister like she was some kind of prey. I couldn't breathe. I was only 10, but I knew enough to understand that something was terribly wrong. The man wasn't just standing there. He was waiting. He was watching my sister with this horrible, calculating look on his face. He looked like a predator ready to pounce. My instincts kicked in. I knew I had to do something. My legs felt like lead, but somehow I found the strength to clear my throat, loudly. The sound snapped through the air, breaking the stillness. I met his eyes, staring at him with a mixture of pure anger, disgust, and a fear I couldn't hide. I was just a little girl, but I was tall for my age, and maybe that was what scared him. Whatever it was, it worked. The man's smile faltered. His eyes darted around the store as if suddenly realizing where he was. Then, in a flash, he turned and ran out of the store like a bat out of hell. The store was silent after he left. My heart was racing, my mind spinning with what had just happened. I looked over at my sister. She was still there, completely oblivious, lost in her world of pixels and noise. She hadn't noticed a thing. Not the man. Not the way he looked at her. Not the way he made my blood run cold. I tried to tell her, but she just shrugged it off. She was too caught up in her tablet, too distracted to even remember the old man. It made me wonder, was it just my imagination? Did I really see what I thought I did, or was the interaction nothing more than a warped dream? But I couldn't shake the feeling that what happened was far too real. Every time I think about it, the terror comes rushing back. The fear of that man's eyes, the way he stood there, just waiting. I can still see his disgusting smile, like something out of a nightmare. And the worst part is, I'll never really know what his intentions were. Was he just a random homeless man? Or was he something darker, something more dangerous? Whatever it was, it still haunts me. I'll never forget that moment. If these stories send a chill down your spine, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more terrifying tales. You never know when the next horror story might be your own.